Well, if we learn anything from reading the Holy Scriptures, and to be honest, from the experience of our own lives, it's that we as human beings are really terrible at resisting temptation. We think that it's all about willpower, that if we just have enough strength of character and willpower, we can resist temptation. But that is not really how human behavior works. Willpower is weak, at least it is for me, especially when I'm thinking about Oreo cookies. Or really any kind of cookies, sweets of any kind. Willpower goes right out the window. Instead, I have learned that the only way successfully to avoid eating Oreo cookies is not to buy Oreo cookies. If they're in the house, I'm going to eat them, but if I don't buy them, I'm not going to eat them. In fact, eating healthy really is all about that, right? It's like having a meal plan and then creating a shopping list and then actually shopping according to the shopping list. You come home with the food you planned, not all the stuff that you saw. But, and you know, they got really slick at this. When you come now at Meijer, they've got all the self-checkout, and you have to run the gauntlet of junk food to get to the checkout counter, right? There's a whole row of stuff that's just calling my name. Oh, chips would be really good, wouldn't they? Delicious. Preparation is the key. It's the same, you know, many of us make our New Year's resolutions. We're going to eat healthy. We're going to save money, right? And we then rely on willpower, and by January 3rd, 4th, they're out the window. So now we're in Lent. It's another chance, right? Oh, Lent is kind of our Christian New Year's resolution time again. I'm going to give up ... Has nothing to do with our spiritual health. It's usually about, you know, saving more money or eating more healthy. But saving money too, it's not about willpower. It's about setting yourself up for success. It's about automating savings, talking to your employer, your pension administrator, so that the money goes right into your savings account before you even see it. That doesn't take any willpower, but it does take preparation. So let's spare a thought for poor Adam and Eve in our lesson today. Poor Adam and Eve who get a bum rap, especially Eve. Let's just say it. Eve is always the villain in the story. Adam comes across as a complete wimp, but Eve gets blamed for the sin. But look, if you look carefully at this text, they were in it together. Her husband, who was with her, he was there the whole time. He is just as guilty as Eve. But let's not be too hard on Adam and Eve, because they were truly innocents. They've been alive, what, 5 minutes at this point? And then the serpent comes up to them, the craftiest of all the wild animals. Somehow he had already studied human psychology, and he knew exactly what to say to get them to fall. They were set up. Imagine you're a parent, and you have or a grandparent, you've got a 5-year-old, and you say to the 5-year-old, you see all these toys over here? You could play with any of these toys. They're all yours to play with. But you see that one toy over there? You know, the G.I. Joe with the Kung Fu grip? You can't play with that. Which toy is that 5-year-old going to be laser focused on? Which toy is suddenly going to be the best toy that's ever existed in the world? He doesn't care anymore about these toys. The only one he wants is the G.I. Joe with the Kung Fu grip. Well, that's what it was like for Adam and Eve. The serpent says, can you eat all the trees, all the fruit? And Eve says, well, you know, there's this one tree we're not supposed to eat, but we can eat everything else. And then the serpent says, but that's a really nice, look at that tree. Doesn't it look good? And suddenly, Eve says, this tree really does look awfully good. That fruit looks amazing. And we'll get all this knowledge, and suddenly she and Adam eat the fruit. But I believe it was a setup. They were always destined to go out into the world, to live lives that were beyond the Garden of Eden. They had no preparation for resisting the serpent. And how could they have? Well, now we fast forward to another temptation story. Jesus has just been baptized. The Spirit has led him into the wilderness, and he is fasting for 40 days and 40 nights. 40 days and 40 nights. I can barely make it through Ash Wednesday and Good Friday. By the end of that day, I can't wait to break my fast. I'm struggling for one day of fasting. He did 40 days and 40 nights, and he is famished. Famished, as you can imagine. And now here comes the tempter again. Still a master of human psychology, the devil says to him, if you are the Son of God, you don't have to be hungry anymore. You see all these stones over here? You can turn those into baguettes. Wouldn't that be delicious? Nice, hot, fresh bread. Oh, that would be, you can almost smell it, can't you? And if you're the Son of God, you don't have to be hungry for attention, right? You're all alone out here in company. You could just throw yourself off this cliff and the angels would just rush to catch you. And if you're the Son of God, you don't have to be hungry for control or power. All you have to do is worship me and I'll give it to you. What a good psychologist that devil is, right? He just knew exactly what to say. So what's the difference between Adam and Eve and Jesus? Very simple. Jesus was prepared. Jesus was not naive and innocent like Adam and Eve were. Jesus knew who he was. He knew his purpose. He knew his mission. He knew his identity. And all that temptation from the devil, he was immune. He could resist because of that preparation. He was immersed in the scriptures. He knew how to answer. He had that preparation. Well, let me tell you, we still face the very same hungers that Jesus did, right? No different. We still hunger to have our physical needs taken care of. We still hunger for attention and for a sense of community and belonging. We still hunger for control, maybe not power hungry, but we like control. We like to think that we're in control of our lives, don't we? We're hungry for those same things. And when we get hungry enough, we can lose sight of who we are. Do you remember those Snickers ads? They're some of my favorite ads of all time. Recently, I saw one with Marilyn Monroe, right? She's on the grave. It's the famous scene where the steam is blowing up and her dress is coming up. And then they pan up to the face, and it's not Marilyn Monroe. It's Willem Dafoe, the ugliest man on earth. Because the tagline is, when you're hungry, you're not yourself. And all you need is a Snickers bar to bring you back to who you are, right? A Snickers bar will solve everything, according to Snickers people. I love that tagline, but let me tell you, spoiler alert, Snickers ain't gonna do it. Instead, we're hungry for something else. What brings us back to ourselves is God. What we're hungry for is God. What we need in our lives is God. What returns us to ourselves and our purpose and our mission, what prepares us for a life in this world, a life of temptation, where everyone's pulling us to be something else, to do something else. What brings us back home is our relationship with God. That's what we're really hungry for. That's what we need. That's what Jesus knew in every fiber of his being, was his identity with God. That's the hole in our hearts and lives that we are so desperate to fill. And all the Snickers bars in the world aren't going to fill up that God-shaped hole. All the power and control in the world is not going to fill up that hole. What we need is God. We need to be immersed in God. And that is the invitation that we get every Lent, to get back on that road. The road that Jesus followed into and then out of the wilderness. come back to our senses like the prodigal son, to know how blessed and loved we are by this God who yearns to draw us to himself. Adam and Eve, yes, had to leave the garden after they ate the fruit of the tree. Not an apple, by the way, just a little trivia. No, the Bible does not say it was an apple. Apples were not native to that part of the world. But whatever the fruit was, they ate it and they had to leave the garden. But did God then stop loving them? No. God provided for them clothing. God provided for them guidance. He sent them into the world to grow up, to be mature in their faith and relationship with God. And yes, the entire rest of the Bible is the ups and downs of their journey. But it was a journey that began in God and a journey that ends in God. And so it is for us. God yearns for us to be so full of God that we radiate the love and compassion of God to the world, that we know who we are and where we are going, because that hole in our hearts is filled with God's presence and love. And that's what I wish for you on this Lenten pilgrimage, is that deep awareness of God's presence in you, with you, for you, filling you with everything you need in abundance.